Welcome to Coast Vue, the show that every single day celebrates the men and women who are making coastal Mississippi such a special place to live, work, and play. Hey, if you go back in history of my shows over the past few months, one of the shows that sticks out is a couple of them, but it's with the same person. It's with my friend Laurie Jackson, who is a missionary in Western Ukraine. She's actually been in Ukraine since 2005, and how I know her is I have my cousin in Alabama, my first cousin in Alabama. Her daughter, Michelle Tice, has adopted two young men from Ukraine, and Laurie was involved in one of those adoptions, and he came from Eastern Ukraine, the Eastern Ukraine that is where all this war is taking place in large measure today. But that war has actually been going on for quite a while. So, Ukraine is no stranger to war. But I was introduced to Laurie by Michelle. And since then, Laurie and I have stayed in touch about what it's like to live in Ukraine these days, and how are they surviving. And now, as an independent missionary, Laurie is involved in all kinds of work, from helping frontline fighters to helping families to you name it. I mean, see, the beauty of a missionary, someone like Laurie, who's so dedicated, is that you find what your role is going to be based on the current situation. And the current situation in Ukraine is needy in so many different ways. And they formed this like this hodgepodge of people that have come together, and they're getting assistance in so many different ways, both inside the country and outside the country, and they're making a difference. And now, today, we have her on the show, once again, from Ukraine. And unfortunately, as kamikaze drones are flying around the country, which has to be making things unbelievably unsettling. But without any further ado, let me welcome my dear friend Laurie Jackson back into the conversation. Hey, Laurie.
Hey, thank you for having me again. And as you were talking about Michelle, I realized that since we talked last, she actually has a new young Ukrainian woman staying with her as well, that we had the honor of hosting here at our hotel, where we have internally displaced people and people like Yulia, who are trying to leave the country and find a place that's safer for them to be.
I know that she is. And, Michelle and her husband and her family, the way they have opened their doors over all these years, and now to have this young woman who, really needed to get out of the country, and to have her, and to see, the posting of the family photos, and the way that Michelle, which in her way, she was raised to just have a wonderful family, whether they're her birthright or not. It's incredible what she's done, isn't it?
It's beautiful, and I'm so thankful for her and for Yulia, and just that they're together and that Yulia's safe, and with a family that loves her is more than, I don't know, it makes everything we're doing worth it, just that one story.
So let's assume that no one has heard us talk before. Mm-hmm. Remind people about how this, I called it a hodgepodge, because it really is the way you kind of found each other, and some have come and gone, and some are still with you from the very beginning, and you're doing all this incredible work. Some of it has to be about getting basic items to people who need it. In some cases, it's helping people on the front line. It continuously evolved. You got vans along the way. It's just think of United Way, but in a hodgepodge kind of way, but happening in Ukraine during a war. How do you talk about it? Tell people a little bit about that history.
Okay, yeah. So on the 24th of February, Russia had a full-scale invasion. There'd been a war going on for 7 years before that. I had actually been in Lugansk when the war started, and was displaced to Kyiv. And then again on the 24th of February, when the full-scale invasion happened. Some friends and I had left Kyiv and were headed west, thinking about crossing the border, trying to decide what to do. And some other friends were kind of in the same situation, and ended up finding a hotel to spend the night in. Most of us had been on the road for 24 plus hours, trying to get out And so we spent the night in the hotel that I'm in right now. And the next morning we woke up and had lots of other friends who had been messaging us, asking for help, asking what road to take, if we knew where they could stay, where they could get gas. And we were like, wow, how can we help? And so we said, can we pay for the hotel for a week, like just for these people who are trying to figure out what to do next? And we did, and a week turned into a month, and a month turned into two, and two turned into three. And then that same time period, you mentioned our vans. We woke up one morning and said, we can't just be here and help the people who are coming here. There are tons of people who are still in harm's way who need help. Like, how can we help them? And so we started looking for vehicles so that we could take food products, things that you couldn't get in a lot of places in Ukraine as they were occupied by Russian troops, and help get food into areas that were occupied at the time or recently liberated. And then in doing that, we also were talking with our friends who had gone to fight, and found out that they didn't have the things they needed. Ukraine's army went from being, I don't know, a very small amount of people to a very large amount of people almost overnight. And the government just couldn't keep up with the needs of an army that increased hugely in the time. And so we had a friend who came, and she was in our warehouse, and she said we had gloves. She saw we had gloves, and she said, she starts crying, and she says, my husband's fighting and he's digging trenches with socks on his hands. And so, yeah, so we've continued since that time to help support our defenders and people the people who are here with us, and people in places that can't leave or for whatever reason are still there.
It's been an interesting transition, because I've been able to watch it carefully through your personal site, and then the UA Ant site that you guys put together. To tell people why you call yourselves ants real quick, if you don't mind.
So we mentioned in the beginning just that on the 24th, everyone was going different directions. And if you've ever watched an anthill, if an anthill gets kicked, the ants immediately scatter to start rebuilding. And we just felt like the whole country had come together in this really incredible way to help both defend and rebuild all at the same time. And it reminded us of ants, and we liked it and stuck with it. So we actually recently in Ukraine opened an official humanitarian organization that is UA Ants.
Oh, wow. That's so cool. And of course, you've got a wide range of incredible people involved. You've got software developers and, entrepreneurs. And imagine any community, if you were just to shuffle the deck of a community and suddenly all these people come together, the skill sets that you have at your disposal that can help toward that humanitarian effort are incredible. I mean, just a case in point, even the logo you guys developed for that is so unique and creative, and it gets your attention. And that's what you wanted to. You wanted to get people's attention, so you want them to have an organization they can safely give to and know that the money's going to be used in a way that is truly humanitarian in the way that you guys are using it. What's interesting too, if you think about the transition you went through, initially a lot of the men sent their wives and families to Croatia and Poland and other places like that. But as we began to understand the war was that the Ukraine was actually doing quite a good job of defending itself, then certain areas became safe to come back into. So while you had this massive, outflux of refugees that you had to help facilitate out of the country, suddenly you were in a situation where you had this massive influx beginning to occur again. And with something like the current events with these kamikaze drones, does it cause people to want to leave again, or what's happening?
Yes and no. We actually, with the kamikaze drones, I would say I haven't had a lot of experience of people wanting to leave again. Actually, interesting, we joke about our president mentioned on the 24th of February, he told us, nobody panic, don't create traffic jams on the roads. And when the first big attack from the kamikaze drone that on October 10th happened, he said, guys, don't try and shoot them down yourselves. We have a military who will do that. And he just understood the will of the Ukrainian people to be a part of protecting and defending their home.
Yeah, there was that. I saw it just yesterday on the news. I saw it might have been a policeman or someone aiming a handgun in the air, shooting at one of the drones, trying to hit. And obviously the chances of hitting it aren't good. And then now the bullets are in the air and they've got to come down somewhere, and it's not a very safe situation. It's not safe any way you shake a stick out of it. It's just not a good situation. When we come back, we'll continue to talk with our friend Laurie Jackson from Ukraine, and get a sense of what the daily life is in Ukraine these days. We'll see you after this break. Welcome back to Coast Vue. If you missed my prior conversations with Laurie Jackson, an independent missionary from Ukraine who's been in Ukraine since 2005, and she uses faith. She's a Christian. She uses faith to guide so much of what she's involved in. And if you think about our prior conversations, and again, if you missed it, I want to center on one thing, and that is that when she and I talked before, I talked about resiliency after Hurricane Katrina and what we learned about what is in the heart and soul of South Mississippians and what it really means to be resilient and bounce back and love our neighbors. Politics and everything else doesn't matter anymore. Where you stand, in the sort of, financial stage of your life, it doesn't matter anymore. It's a war is an equal opportunity to destroy, just as Hurricane Katrina was. But what you learn about us is the thing that attracts people to us. In my conversations with Laurie, I got the sense, as she talked about the people of Ukraine, that they're just like coastal Mississippians. They love their community. They have a strong faith in God. At least most of them do. They love their country. They would fight for their country, and obviously we're seeing that now. But Laurie, at the time that you and I spoke the first time, and we went in great detail about the culture of that place and what drew you there. You're from Florida, but what drew you there? We didn't know at the time that Ukraine would do so well, that the story that would be told about Ukraine is not only that the rest of the world is coming to begin to help you in ways that are very important, but that the war is going to be fought by Ukrainians that will not take failure for an option, and they will pay a heavy price for that. But you didn't know how it was going to turn out. We still don't know how it's going to turn out, but we're further along in the situation. And the story about the war is the spirit of Ukrainians. That's resonating around the world. And you understood that was going to be the story from day one, didn't you?
Absolutely. We all knew it.
So tell listeners about that. What is that's so compelling?
Ukrainians are connected in deep roots and just love for family, for community, for even, I don't know, like bringing people into their community. Part of what makes my staying so important to me is because I'm so accepted and included in my circles here. And so I know that Ukrainians are going to defend me. And so, of course, I want to defend them. And just this, connectedness of, and the importance of being who you are, and wanting to fight for that independence, that freedom of knowing who you are as a community. And I think it's very Christian in nature. We are created to take care of one another. And Ukrainians get that in a way that I think a lot of people maybe don't.
Well, coastal Mississippians get it. I can assure you that. It drives me crazy when the war is politicized, but we won't get into that in the show today. But I will say it does give me comfort to know that more people are beginning to understand that we're not just protecting Ukraine. This war is so much bigger than that. Do you find yourself at times having to explain to people why this is even bigger than Ukraine. I mean, you're on the ground and you're seeing it play out every single day, but the ramifications, the global ramifications of this war are so significant. Do you ever have to explain to people why that's important?
Я чуть попозже.
Я хотела тебе сказать, нет у тебя на ужин, думаю, такой ужин сказочный, иди ужинай.
Добрый.
Okay, so
sorry, she's calling me, telling me I missed dinner, but she just didn't.
That's okay. Oh, God bless you. God bless you. So yeah, to go ahead now. Do you find yourself in a position where you're having to explain sort of the more holistic aspects of this war?
I do get a lot of questions, and I don't know. To me, it's so clear. Like, and maybe that's because I'm here. But I don't know, like in the beginning, like for everyone, it kind of felt black and white. And now I feel like you're saying like it's become more politicized and that people are asking more questions about like, why does it matter? And especially as prices increase, as your life is beginning to be affected by the sacrifice that America or other countries are making, especially Europe, are making to help us keep fighting. And so we're super grateful for the help, but we also like hope that the world will see and understand that if freedom in Ukraine, if Ukraine loses its freedom, the rest of the world is next. And Ukraine's ready to fight for it for all of you. But we can only do what we can do with what we have.
And that's the part that's so clear to you, and it should be clear to everyone. And people, the average person, unfortunately, doesn't really understand the geopolitical issues that exist around. They just don't. I mean, they probably are more aware of those things today because I don't care who you are, you try to get your head around how can someone like Putin cause so much misery, and for what reason is he causing that misery? And the misery goes way beyond Ukraine. I mean, it's not just inflation; it's the ability to be able to get grain out of Ukraine to third world war countries where famine is already an issue, and now that you've got that reverberating impact, and the cost of petroleum, which we talk about here in coastal Mississippi, or excuse me, in America often. But it's just, you think about the importance of NATO, and I think people are getting this dramatic education about what NATO is and why NATO is important and how Ukraine's caught in between all this. And I mean, the list really is very complicated. But at the end of the day, I think the way you boiled it down to freedom-loving countries banding together and recognizing that if we let this get beyond Ukraine, if this stands in Ukraine, then what is next? And if what is next is a NATO country, holy mackerel! It's we're into serious ramifications under those scenarios. Are you still there, Laurie?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you froze there for a second, but all those things sound very familiar to you, don't they?
Absolutely, yeah, for sure.
So with the announcement I heard this morning where NATO is going to be sending tremendous number of anti-drone capabilities. Yeah, that's great to see. I still say, again, this is not a political statement. It's just a reality. I see the kamikaze drones from Iran being more a terrorist act and seemingly desperation on the part of Putin. I don't know what the end game is there, other than the fact that he's trying to hit the average person in Ukraine with the fact that maybe you won't have power or whatever going into some cold months, and I'm sure that concerns everyone.
We're very concerned about the winter, especially like you said with the new kamikaze drones and hitting electric stations and things like this. Winters are hard in Ukraine, and they're always hard for people from hard places. And this year, all of us are kind of in hard places. And so we have several projects we're working on to kind of help prepare for that. We're trying to install wood-burning stoves in homes that already don't have gas or electricity that they're able to use, collecting sleeping bags. We're putting together home first aid kits that just have basic medicine that you would have in your homes in it that families don't necessarily have. different things like this that just we know that it's going to be hard for everyone everywhere, and we want to be investing in that now as much as we can, and just pray that that it won't be what we're expecting, because we can't help what we're expecting, but again, we can help the 1 or the 10 or the 1,000 that God puts in front of us, and we will.
I do, in terms of resiliency, I do compare it to what we experienced here after Hurricane Katrina, because the reality is that while it was, Katrina came, Katrina went, and then we were in a recovery period. But think about what it was like to not have, electricity. Think about what it was like, for example, not to have the drugs you needed because you couldn't have access to those drugs. But imagine that Katrina were to come and never, it just stayed here, and it would hit over there, and it would hit over there, and it just continued to create turmoil for our country. That's what Laurie and the people of Ukraine are dealing with. And think, too, about how nonprofits and volunteers and all church groups and all these people came together after Hurricane Katrina. The exact same thing is happening in Ukraine today. And it's happening while the bombs keep flying into the country. And what you came to know about yourself and the people who are around you, and so many other Ukrainians that are defining the spirit of Ukraine, is that when you set out to leave through Western Ukraine and landed at the hotel where you are today, you actually discovered that leaving wasn't an option, didn't you?
We're here.
You're here for the duration. Listen, we're out of time, but Laurie, it has been a pleasure to touch base with you again. God bless you. You're an inspiration. All those people who surround you are an inspiration. All the Ukrainian people are an inspiration, and I'll do everything in my power to try to bring awareness in my small part of the world to what you're having to deal with. God bless you, my friend.
Thank you. I truly appreciate you having us.
You bet. We'll see you after this break.